My name's Kate Newstead. I'm the Marketing Science Lead at the B2B Institute at LinkedIn. And usually that means I have the nerdiest job title in the world, at least in the room. It also means today that I'm the perfect person to start you off with a little physics lesson. Now, don't worry, you haven't rocked up to the wrong stage. This is all about marketing, but we're going to start with the other sciences, with physics, right? And we all know that there are laws in the world of physics. Newton, for example, found the laws in motion. An apple laid at rest stays at rest. An object, for every action one way, there's a reaction the other way. And even if, like me, you could never understand, write down, or name that crazy equation on the screen, we know from our high school sciences subjects and teachers that laws exist in the world of physics. But what most of us don't know is that there are also a whole host of important laws in the world of marketing. The laws of marketing explain how brands grow and how they decline, and they have really important implications for a lot of the decisions we make as marketers or as brand owners. For example, how we invest in advertising, what happens when we change prices, what sort of loyalty and retention programs we run, and our customer recruitment strategies. The Ehrenberg-Bass Institute is credited with making the laws of marketing famous. These researchers and marketing scientists have a hand in shaping the brand and marketing strategies of most of the biggest brands in the world. And most of those are B2C brands. However, B2B marketers generally are less aware and less au fait with these laws of marketing. And that's a real shame, because even though they're grounded in the B2C world, they have a huge application for B2B brands as well. And what you're going to see today is really specific examples of how you can use them to make your B2B business grow. And that's where the B2B Institute comes in. We're really concerned with how we take these laws and make them practical and turn them into reality for the B2B world. We collaborate and partner with industry experts, with institutions, with universities, including the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, including Khan, including ANA, IPA, and a host of independent researchers, for example, Fran Cassidy, Les Binet, and Peter Field. And through our network, we publish at-scale real research into advertising and B2B marketing, and we also provide white-glove customized services for our top spending clients in LinkedIn. And our objective, why our institute exists and what we are most concerned about day to day, is how to help marketers build renowned brands. How to turn your brand into a famous brand, how to grow your brand and invest in your brand, because we know time and time again from all the research we do and all the independent academic research we see as well, that it's the big brands, the famous brands, that's how you win, right? That's what creates scale, that's what creates revenue and profit, and it's also what creates amazing marketing careers. So today we're going to talk all about how B2B brands, small brands, tech brands grow. If you happen to work on any of those kinds of brands, or even if you work in brands that are totally different from all of the above, you're guaranteed to learn some tips today that you can put into practice. My colleague Ty is going to take us through the learnings you need to know to make your brands grow. Let's give it up and welcome Ty to the stage.
Hello, everybody. How's inbound for everyone? Enjoying it? Really good to see you all here. My name is Ty Heath, as Kate said. I'm director at LinkedIn's B2B Institute think tank. We're on a mission to build famous B2B brands. The cool thing about this session is that you all, or maybe some of you all, voted for this topic to happen here today. So I'm really excited to share more about it. So welcome again to the Inbound Originals stage. And I'm proud to say that I've been coming to Inbound since 2012. So I've been here for a while, folks. All right, so let's kick into the conversation. So this is really about small brands, but as Kate said, you're going to get a lot out of it, even if that's not you. How many of you are small, have a small brand, small, medium-sized business? Okay, Cool, cool. How many of you are friends of small businesses? Every hand. Come on, folks. All right. But everyone loves a good underdog story. So these are some of our favorite movies here on the screen. You've got The Karate Kid. You've got Bend It Like Beckham, a great one, Hidden Figures, Creed. What we love about these movies and these stories overall is that they celebrate the idea of hard work, tenacity, and clever strategy over brute force. We love the ingenuity of the stories and the way that they problem solve to get to their goal. So these are the things that inspire us about a good underdog story. And guess what? In the business world, small brands are the ultimate underdogs, right? And guess what? In marketing, we have our own underdog stories. So these brands you see, whether it's Airbnb, Warby Parker, MailChimp, the cool thing about these brands is that what they lacked in size, they made up for with their creativity and also with their thoughtful media strategy. So I'm not here to debate the profitability or even look at the business model. What I'm pointing to is that these brands started from being unknown to being household names. I think we can all agree on that, right? Okay, great. I'm seeing the head nods here on that. So we feel this slide because there's a universe of challenges for small brands and large brands alike, right? So whether it's cash flow challenges, limited resources, brand awareness, these are all challenges that we're connected to. But here's the distinction. If you're a small brand, you're starting on first base. And if you're a large brand, you're over there on third base. So that's the challenge. The laws and the things we have to think about remain the same, but the question is, how do you overcome that lopsided world, the lopsided advantage that big brands have over small brands? Well, first thing to think about is that you have to understand the rules of the game. Once you understand the rules of the game, you can then play that game better than anyone else. So that's what we're actually going to look into today. So I'll say that advertising is a competitive sport where small brands compete directly with big brands for attention and market share. But if we're going to say what the rule of the game is, memory. Memory is the rule of the game. Marketers are in the memory business, actually. And so what we all have to do, whether you're big or small, is reach in-market customers during a fleeting window of in-market opportunity. So why is memory the game? I'm going to explain using this next slide here. So we're at inbound. We're all familiar with the funnel. It's one of the most recognized mental models in all of marketing. You know the funnel I'm talking about: awareness, consideration, purchase. We're all familiar with that funnel. The challenge with the traditional marketing funnel is it's not particularly customer or finance centric. It leads us to believe as marketers that it's our advertising that moves people through the funnel. But we have a different perspective at the B2B Institute, and that is that people are either in market, they're ready to buy something from you right now, or they're out market, they're not ready to buy, and if they're out market, they're not thinking about your brand at all. So we actually need a different way to think about how this works, one that's more customer and finance centric. So what we say is we take the traditional funnel, turn it on its side, stretch it out over time, and now I give you folks the cash flow funnel. So I call this a money slide. This is a money slide, folks. And there's a rule that we call the 95-5 rule. And in B2B, what that rule says is that 95% of category buyers are out market at any given time. So if you think about what that means, there's a 5% in-market buyers. Those buyers represent your current buyers. Those are your current cash flow. That 95%, that of out-market buyers, represents your future cash flow. So in that way, this mental model is more customer and finance centric. It's a good conversation to have with your finance people, because what's missing here is if we're only investing in that 5%, we're actually putting a cap on our growth. And right now in B2B, 80% of our budgets are flowing towards those in-market customers. What we're missing is our future buyers and future cash flow. The in-market buyers, that represents lead generation. The out-market buyers, that future cash flow, that's memory generation. And memory generation is a matter of brand investment. And so that's the opportunity. That's why memory is the game. So let's actually take a look at this using a fishing metaphor. I don't know if anybody fishes here. Yay, we've got at least one or two fisher people in the audience. But what we're looking at here is the CRM category, and the fish on this slide represent the opportunity. And in any given quarter for this category, if we're focusing on those 10 buyers, we're missing those other 90 fish, our future pipeline. In this case, I should say our future fish basket, right? So we're missing out on that future. Even more, those in-market buyers, once they're in market, what they do is they search the search engine in their mind for the brands they already know. And what we know to be true is that 8 of those 10 in-market buyers, they're only considering 3 brands. So they're searching, and they're really only remembering 3 brands. That leaves us, the rest of us, to compete with the 1,570 other brands for those 2 remaining customers. Anyone in Vegas can tell you those are not great odds to have to deal with, right? So, even more, once those 3 brands are locked in to someone's mind, they're creating their short list, they're creating their day one list, it's really hard to move them away from those brands. So the 92% of people are already locked in. So that leaves us with that one remaining fish to catch. And trust me, that fish or person is being blasted with free trials, white papers, ads. So it becomes really risky and also competitive to earn that customer's business. So this is what we're facing, right? Every excluded brand leaving that one opportunity to capture that last remaining opportunity. So there are 3 stats to remember in this conversation that we need to overcome to win here. And the point is, if you don't come to mind the moment a buyer enters the market, then it's already too late. So 86%, that's the number of buyers that already have that day one list of brands. 3.4 is the number of brands that are in that set within their mind that they're considering. And then even in high consideration categories like business banking, many of them are still choosing, 92% are still choosing the brand that they already have on the day one list. So that's what we have to remember. But here's the good news. It's never too early to start preparing for your future. We can make decisions today that our future self will be proud of us for making. And one of those is thinking about how we start to build our brand investment. So what you're looking at on this slide is the life cycle of a business over time. You know, from exploring and building all the way to sustained growth. And so the challenge is, if you're not investing in brand, you're not achieving the reach, you're not having an opportunity to be remembered. The other thing that starts to happen if we're using lead generation in a lopsided way is our customer acquisition costs can balloon. And there's an inflection point that you can see on this slide at the $500 million revenue mark. And that's where we need to start to absolutely bring in brand, to start to bend that cost curve down in that case. And that's where the idea of the brand investment comes in, to start to pull more weight for your business. And that's really the opportunity in front of us to explore, because investors want those profits, we want those profits, but we have to also then manage our costs. Brand is how you start to do that. Serena Williams is speaking at Inbound today. We're all very excited about that. We are not going to be able to step out onto the court and play tennis as well as her, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that brand building requires building a muscle to do it. We're not going to be able to forehand and backhand right off the bat. We have to start building early to have that muscle to do it. Okay, so now that we've covered the background on why memory is the game that we're playing, I want to talk about where we are right now. Let's talk about the state of B2B marketing and consider how we got to this point where it is so lopsided in terms of the way we invest. And so it starts with something called product-led growth. Has anyone ever heard of product-led growth? I see a few hands here. Oh, more than a few hands. So it was very, very prevalent in B2B tech. And so I have to start with this slide, of course, too. It's one of those gloomy and doomy slides about the state of marketing today. It's almost like required. I'm sorry, folks. But what we have seen is that the average CMO tenure has been on the decline for a while. And then even the tenure across industry by years, tech CMOs have been plagued the worst out of the rest of their counterparts in the industry as well. The point being here is by learning these rules, we as marketers can start to reclaim territory because we're clear on the value that we create for the business and how to get that job done. So that's the point of these slides, and also, frankly, the point of the other research that we do at the B2B Institute as well. So at the same time as the marketing tenure has been on the decline, the interest in product-led growth has soared. And what this has resulted in, whether it's a coincidence or not, is an imbalance in power between marketing and product. So there's some rebalancing work and a conversation that needs to happen here. But what is product-led growth? So let's take a look at that. So on one side, you have the traditional go-to-market strategy. On the other side, you have product-led growth. On the traditional go-to-market strategy side of things, marketing and sales lead the way. We sell the product. We're out there. We're doing it. And then it's the ads that prime the customers to make the decision. On the product-led growth side, the thinking is the product is so good that it sells itself, right? And then it's the demand gen that comes in and captures that demand. So the distinction between these two things is the role that product plays. I'm not saying that one of these strategies is inherently better. What I'm advocating for is a more balanced approach to taking this on. And so what I want to point out also is that PLG worked until it didn't. What you're looking at is the NASDAQ Cloud Index over time. And for years, product-led growth was the golden ticket. It was the special sauce. There was a wave happening, VC investment was happening, IPOs everywhere. It was a boom, really abundant funding. It was a really, really big time. So PLG seemed like the way to go. Then, in 2022, a market correction happened, and that forced us to confront some things. So tech valuations plummeted, VC investment dried up, and it stopped being about growth at all costs and more about profit, a focus on profitability. So that's what we're contending with. And then the conversation around PLG started to change. The hype deflated. So you have experts like Oliver Jay, who really invested in this strategy at Dropbox and Asana, starting to change his tune on product-led growth, saying there was hype in the Harvard Business Review. You have Theory Ventures also saying that product-led growth is 5 to 10% less profitable. And so on, the conversation about product-led growth. And then the thing that we have to think about is, did we mistake the economic boom for the value of product-led growth? What this really becomes is a conversation about rebalancing and thinking about the role of brand and how brand building also supports how we drive long-term growth for our businesses. Okay, so now with all of that, we've talked about memory. We're in the memory business as marketers. We've set the stage with the context of how did we get here? How did we get to this product-led growth thinking? Now we're going to get into the game for underdogs. We're actually going to talk about the laws that we need to understand to actually play to win. Those are the double jeopardy law of duplication of purchase, and the law of buying frequency. So we'll go through each one in turn. And like I said, we have to learn the rules of the game and then play the game better than anyone else. So the first law we're going to get into is the double jeopardy law. And this examines the relationship between the size of a brand and people's loyalty to the brand. So, first of all, just the product-led growth mindset says growth comes from the product just being so amazing and so great that you're able to achieve outsized retention. They'll just stay with you because your product is amazing. But what this law actually says is that brands grow by acquiring new customers, not just by retaining your existing customers. Okay, so here's the deal. And I know this might be counterintuitive, but the more people recognize your brand, the more likely they are to stick with you. There is a correlation, there is a relationship between the size of your brand and how loyal your customers will be. So let's take a look at this, because we want to listen to what Professor Jenny Romaniak is saying, and she's saying that means there is one primary way to grow your brand, and that is through customer acquisition, expanding the size of your customer base. Here's how it looks. So loyalty is a function of penetration. What you're looking at on this slide is the CRM category. On the left, you have the brands, and on the right, you have penetration and you have retention rate. So big brands like Adobe, Salesforce, and Microsoft, who also have high penetration, have high retention. On the flip side, small brands like Monday.com, Freshworks, and Pegasystems, who have lower penetration, also have lower retention. So you can see the correlation between these things. Small brands face a double whammy. You have less customers, and those customers are less loyal. That's where the name, the law of double jeopardy, comes into play. Big brands, by contrast, are benefiting from the high recognition that they already have. So that's what we're facing, that's what we have to overcome. Let me show you this from a different angle. Let's talk about cloud. It's the same setup. So brands on the left, and you have penetration and retention on the right here. So the double jeopardy law is revealing these big brands like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. It's not that they have a better product necessarily. It's that they have more customers, that they're able to generate this higher retention rate. If you look at Cloudflare and DigitalOcean, in order for them to achieve the same retention rate as Microsoft, for example, they would need to triple their penetration. Is this making sense so far? You're seeing the correlation here on the slide. Excellent. So the thinking here is that penetration drives almost all important buyer behavior. Love this quote. Of the 1,001 variables, 999 of them don't matter. Penetration is key. So what can we do? How can we achieve this objective? How do we start on the path to growth? We have to reach customers. We have to acquire customers. What you're looking at on this slide is balanced across the different objectives here. So you have different marketing objectives. And the idea is here, when you balance brand and demand, you're able to both reach people in a cost-effective way. So we want to also do a shameless plug for LinkedIn on this slide. Couldn't resist, because it's how you can achieve Super Bowl level targeting, and you'll find that when you also choose the brand awareness objective, you're going to be able to balance the cost of that as well. So quick summary for this law before we go into the second law. The summary is that brands grow by acquiring new customers, not just by trying to retain existing customers. So for small brands, we want to be reach maximalists. So you're prioritizing reach for your budget. You're being efficient by balancing both brand and demand. In the course of doing that, you're advertising consistently year-round to make sure that you're available, you're mentally available when someone comes in market. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the next law, which is the duplication of purchase law. And this one shows how brands compete against each other based on brand size. So again, the product-led growth hypothesis says that your brand is just so amazing, your product is just so amazing that you achieve outsized customer acquisition. But in this case, brands actually grow by acquiring customers from larger customers. And I want to point out too, smaller brands are competing with small brands and large brands alike. So we're going to get into this a little bit more because I don't think this is a surprise to folks, but once we get into it, you'll see where it might get a little surprising. So not only do we compete with the biggest brands, we're sharing our customers with the biggest brands as well. So every B2B brand is sharing their customers with brands that have larger penetration. So what does this mean? It means that there's no loyalty, right? Deep sigh. There's no loyalty, folks. And let me show you what this looks like. So again, you have brands on the left-hand side of the slide, and then you have the customer sharing between those brands in descending amounts of sharing, right? And so brands, you're going to find the larger brands are sharing more customers with bigger brands and less customers with smaller brands. So looking at an example, a big brand like Google is going to share more customers with Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is going to share relatively more customers with a big brand like Google, okay? So here's what this means for what we have to do as small brands. So number one, we have to steal customers from large brands. So that's number one. Number two, we have to defend our customers from being stolen by other brands as well. And then three, we have to compete and earn the business of every brand that's coming in market for our services. So that's what's in front of us. You have to compete to get those people that are coming into the category for the first time. That's what we have to nail if we're going to win this game. So let's zero in on Amazon so you can see this example. So Amazon, large brand, they're going to share very few customers with a small brand, 6% with Mixpanel, for example. And then you look at Oracle, so slightly bigger, they're going to share 23%. But if you look at Google, Amazon's going to share the most with Google, 54%. And the takeaway here that I want you all to get is that brands and our customers, frankly, are polygamist with the brands they buy, right? So that's what we're dealing with, okay? And here's the thing, if your glass half empty, then you're recognizing that your customers aren't loyal. And that's a challenge. If your glass half full, what you're thinking is that no brand has a lock on all customers. Okay? All right, so I think that's the opportunity. But the big brands have these advantages. So what can we do? One of the things we can invest in is how do we win the mind to win the market? And strong branding is how you start to overcome the advantages that large brands have. It overcomes the natural bias for attention that people have to the larger brands that are more well-known. This is where we invest in distinctive branding to make ourselves more competitive. So we want to start to invest in what's called mental availability. So back to the fishing metaphor here, being more well-recognized allows you to pull in more inbound customers. It increases the chances a prospect will actually bite, and then you increase your chance of converting those customers as well. So that's why we want to invest in this idea of mental availability. But how do you do it? It goes back to your creative. Your creative is one of the single biggest drivers of edge opportunities of growth in B2B. So here's a study from our friends at Ehrenberg Bass Institute. And what it says is that effective creative drives 10 to 20 times more sales. So even on a small budget, if you have wonderful creative, I'm talking about logos, fonts, colors, sounds, all of these things can help start to distinguish you from your larger competitors. If you're interested, we actually have a session that talks specifically about how to do this at 4 o'clock on the education stage. If you're interested in the secrets of effective B2B branding, encourage everyone to come to that. So here's the other thing to keep in mind. Betting big doesn't necessarily require you having a big budget. What you can start to think about is how can you have a more focused investment? So you have Warren Buffett here. He's one of the biggest, most well-known investors of all time. One of the things that he talks about is how you place financial bets. Well, in marketing, we place bets as well when we decide what messages we're going to invest in. So there's an opportunity here because he says diversification is protection against ignorance. It's for people that aren't clear about what they're doing. If we are clear on the things that people are interested in working with us on, the buying situations where people come in market for your services, then we can start to target those situations. But how do you know what those situations are that you should be investing in? One way, you could do research. You could invest in rigorous research to do this. But on a small budget, one of the things you can do is just talk to your salespeople. Or if you are the primary salesperson, you begin to understand what motivates your buyers, what triggers them to come in market with a thing called category entry points. And these are the things that people come in market where they're interested in your solution. Now, I'm guessing category entry points or the idea of buying situations might be a little bit abstract for people. So we're actually going to do a quick exercise to show people what this is all about. I'm looking for a volunteer from the audience, somebody that loves coffee. I'm looking for a heavy coffee drinker. Can we get somebody to raise their hand, heavy coffee drinker, and maybe you and your friends are around you are heavy coffee drinkers. And Kate is going to bring a mic to you right now. Okay, hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Anthony DeMaio.
Nice to meet you, Anthony. Thanks for volunteering. So you're a heavy coffee drinker, Anthony?
I guess this defines on how you're defining heavy, right?
Well, you're in good company, I'm sure. I saw a number of other hands raised. So a couple questions for you, and you can feel free to also have the people around you help you in answering, because we're very curious to poll to get this idea of category entry points. So the first question I'll ask you is, what is the first coffee brand that comes to mind when you think about coffee?
Folgers?
Folgers, okay, Folgers. The best part of waking up, folks, right? So for many people, that is a popular answer. For many people, they also tend to answer Starbucks, or this is Boston. So guess what they say?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, that's right, Anthony. So whichever brand that typically comes to mind is usually tends to be the biggest brand in the category. They have built the most mental availability, and for that brand, there are a number of different buying situations and entry points that cause the person to think about that brand. So Anthony, I have a few more questions for you.
Go for it.
Okay, so Anthony, what is the coffee brand that comes to mind when you want to meet a friend at a cafe?
Starbucks.
Starbucks, okay. What is the coffee brand that comes to mind for you when you're walking down the street on the way to work? Is it still Starbucks? Or
Probably
is it
Dunkin'.
Dunkin'? Okay. But you see how some of these brands are being named multiple times? That means they're owning more of these different buying situations. Okay, let me ask you another question. What is the coffee brand that comes to mind when you're curled up on the couch on a Sunday, maybe it's raining outside, with a blanket?
Starbucks.
Starbucks. Okay, okay. So some people might have said Folgers. In that case, some people might have said Stumptown. But the point being is that in each situation, the brand name tends to change. And what that represents is an opportunity for marketers to identify what those situations are and start to deliver your messaging against that message. And that way you're focusing your limit. We all wish we had unlimited budget, don't we? But we don't. But then you can start to invest your limited funds into that particular buying situation. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. Anthony, thank you so much for participating. We've got a free premium LinkedIn subscription for you. Please see us afterwards. Okay. So moving on, just to summarize this before we get into the next one, brands grow by acquiring new customers at a higher rate than they lose existing customers. So what do? Build distinctive brand assets, invest in your logo, font, colors, all of those things. Invest in understanding your buying situations and be bold with it. So now we're going to move on to the law of buying frequencies. And that's our final law. It's why it's important to target all customers and serve them as profitably as you can. So again, the product-led growth hypothesis says that your product is so amazing that you're going to achieve outsized acquisition from that. But the law of buying frequency says that you grow by acquiring all types of customers, and that there are a ton of light customers to acquire, but very few heavy buyer customers to acquire. So what you're looking at on this slide are a couple different categories to illustrate this. We've got business intelligence, cloud infrastructure, and CRM. And what you're seeing is the spend from light to heavy. And on this, you're seeing a pattern of distribution regardless of the category you're looking at. This is called a negative binomial distribution. And so what you're seeing is that most of the buying is happening with light buyers, and there are very few heavy buyers to acquire at the category level. You see the same thing at the brand level. So whether it's Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, you're seeing the same negative binomial distribution where there are few light buyers to acquire and a lot of light buyers to acquire rather, and very few heavy buyers. What do we like to say is that this is like a bag of Skittles. And I say because everyone wants the red Skittles, right? Red Skittle fans, everyone? Red Skittles? But in order to get the red Skittles, you actually have to buy the entire bag. So in this case, the big three marketers here that we're looking at aren't leading the category necessarily because they have better products. It's because they've learned how to profitably serve both light and heavy buyers. And that's the game for us as a small brand as well, to think about how do we go about doing that. So one of the ways, and I don't think it's a surprise for you at this point, you're probably catching on to a theme. How do we start to compete? We have to bring brand into the conversation. So brand creates value that activation doesn't create on its own. So if you're talking about driving short-term sales, both investing in brand and demand or sales activation is going to help drive that short term. But brand can pull so much more weight to support your investment. It allows you to invest in long-term sales. Having a strong brand gives you pricing power. It also gives you something called category optionality. So if your category is starting to shrink, it gives you the opportunity to pivot into a new category or a new space more easily. It also lets you recruit great talent more quickly. And then also it helps set up a competitive moat. So if we're in this conversation about how do we manage our costs, how do we serve customers profitably, brand has to be a part of the conversation. And we see this reflected in our efforts at LinkedIn as well. So what you're looking at here is cold and warm buyers, with cold buyers being folks that were exposed to demand generation only, and warm being folks that were exposed to both brand and demand. And you see that when your customers are exposed to brand and demand, you see an uplift in click-through rate, 71%, and then also lead generation form completion rate of 90%. So again, making the case for a more balanced investment in brand and demand, and for all of us to build the muscle of brand building earlier as small businesses. Okay, so just to recap this, and as we come to the close of the presentation, here, brands grow by acquiring all customers, both light and heavy. And how do we do that? This presentation isn't about managing your operation costs or your culture, but those things are incredibly important to help bring your costs down. But the other big part of that story is building your brand for all of the reasons I just named, whether it's pricing power, attracting talent more easily, all of those reasons. Okay, so now we're going to summarize everything. We all know the laws of growth now. We've got the double jeopardy law. You have to acquire new customers to grow. The duplication of purchase law. We have to acquire customers from big brands to grow. We also have the law of buying frequencies, which says that we have to acquire all types of customers, both light and heavy buyers to grow. But focus on those light buyers and serving them profitably. So I'll leave us with a quote back to our fishing metaphor here, because I understand that the art of brand building is not an easy one. It's something we have to build a muscle for. It takes courage, it takes conviction. It's not a short-term investment, it's a long-term investment. And I know that from time to time we're under pressure to deliver those short-term results. Hopefully this presentation and other parts of our research that you can check out help you make the case for that long-term investment as well. If you give a marketer a lead and if you feed them for a day, if you teach a marketer to build a brand, you feed them for a lifetime. That was a fancy philosopher. Just kidding, we made that up ourselves. But it's totally fitting. And I want to say thank you, but wait, there's more. So first I want to encourage you to connect with us. We've got a ton more research. If this was helpful to you, we would love to hear. Feel free to connect with myself and Kate, especially if you're interested in spending some time with these slides. We can send them to you, and you can let that marinate a bit. You can download a presentation, and don't worry, feel free to connect with us. I see people whipping out their phones as well. So you can get this presentation, and then we've got some other goodies, and there's more. So here's a great one, folks. This is a $1,000 ad coupon that we are giving away here. All you have to do is set up the tools to help you measure your marketing investment more powerfully on LinkedIn. So this is about our LinkedIn Conversions API and also our Revenue Attribution Report. So get this QR code, I'm going to move out of the way. I'm like, get out of the way so you can take a picture of that one. Definitely take advantage of this offer as well. And then we've got more for you as well. If you want to take your strategy to the next level, we've got a bunch of amazing resources for you as well with this QR code. So feel free to take a shot of that. Scan that to learn more. If you've missed anything I've said, or you want to talk more, you can find us at the LinkedIn booth. You can also find myself and Kate as well on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate you coming. All right.